Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Women Warriors, where we are learning to stay connected to Christ. I am your host, Dominique, and so we are wrapping up Pink Sundays. It's always a fun time, it's always a beautiful experience each and every year for us to do Pink Sundays. Our last guest, unfortunately, was not able to make it, and so we are going to go ahead and jump right back into continuing the transparent version of our testimonies. We are so excited, as always, for next year to raise awareness for breast cancer once again. So stay tuned for our third annual Pink Sundays next year. And so we're going to talk about today a fresh dedication. And so we'll start off today by telling you guys what the definition, of dedication is. So the definition of dedication is given up devoted to be committed to a task or a purpose. And so synonyms for dedication could be tenacious, devoted, or committed. And so I also always like to have a scripture that kind of ties into the episode. And so, again, the episode is a fresh dedication. And the scripture that I would like to read to you all tonight is from the NIV version, Romans 8:28. And it says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And so today we're going to talk about dedication to purpose, our dedication to our walk with God, and how we could give God a fresh dedication in order to have access to some of the things that we be begging for, that we literally beg him for. And so a lot of this episode is going to be tied into ways that we can give God a fresh dedication in order to have access to larger territory. And so, and just because it's good for your soul to remain dedicated to God, forget the purpose, forget the plan, forget all of the things, like just having God. If it didn't come with anything else, if there wasn't anything attached to it for our benefit, then having God would just be enough. But thank God that he is so gracious and so kind and giving. And so he gives us purpose. He gives us a reason to be here. And so he knows the purpose that he has over every single person. And I wholeheartedly believe that every single person on this earth serves some purpose. Like God knew that the world would need them for something. And so everyone is a blessing, no matter what you think about your coworker or your neighbor or whatever. Everyone is a blessing and everyone has a purpose. It is up to us, to ask God to put us in alignment with that purpose. And so today I got a word, and it was just about, in short, I won't tell the whole thing, but in short, this person was saying to me that God sees that you've been dedicated. And that kind of hit me like in the feels a little, because I'm like, I think I could be doing better, God. But we are our own worst critic as well. And so they were just saying that you've been dedicated and God sees your heart and he knows that you have been dedicated to the things that he's asked you to do. And so they were also highlighting that I had been apprehensive in my dedication. I had been apprehensive to moving forward because of me not being able to see anything. And so I took the word home with me and I was like, God, what does that mean? Because I know that you were saying something. You were saying that to say something. And so God just began telling me, you need to dedicate more. Like at this point, dedicate everything that you have, dedicate it all. I've seen that you've been faithful. I've seen that you built the business I told you to build, or businesses I told you to build. I've seen that you have, started the podcast I told you to start, but I need you to continue to be dedicated. And so then that's got me to asking, just questions to myself, like, okay, some of the questions that I believe that we could all ask ourselves in anticipation of giving God a fresh dedication to what He's told us to do. One of the questions that I wrote down for myself is, well, there's one statement, and then I'll go to the questions. But the statement is that what we dedicate ourselves to is important. It's huge, in this time. What we dedicate ourselves to is so important. And so then I begin to ask myself as well, and you can ask yourself too, what am I dedicating my life and my time to? Is it fruitful? Does it align with my purpose? Maybe highlighting actions or things or people that you may have attachment to that are not aiding or aligning you with the purpose that God has on your life. What strategies am I using to release things that do not align with my purpose? And so that could be, praying more. It could be reading more. It could be using lesser or not at all of the vice that you use for emotional comfort. It could range from changing your routine. Maybe you alter your day so that you maybe don't have time for the thing that is not aiding in your growth. Um, just challenging yourself day by day to try different things, to try different perspectives, to see what the outcome would be. Like, not using the same thing that we've been using for the last 10 years myself, 10 years or so. I'm just not using the same vices, not using the same mind frame to try to dedicate more of my time to God, more like just more everything. And that is a part of what God was saying to me. Like, I want you to dedicate it all of your time to your purpose. I want you to dedicate your energy, dedicate time to investing, into what I told you to do. Go back to the last thing that I told you to do and do that thing. Like, rededicate yourself. And this time, dedicate everything you have, dedicate it all so that I can increase you. And so God was telling me, like, you are very dedicated to what I asked you to do. That is not that your dedication is not the problem. You do Woman Warriors, you do the businesses, you do them with your eyes closed, and you're very faithful in the little that I have provided for you to see what you would do. You've been very faithful over it. But in order for you to have much, you have to dedicate more. You have to release yourself from some of these things that are no longer serving you. You have to release those things. And so God is just impressing upon me that if you begin to release some of those things, for example, he was saying, like, in a lot of these past situations, instead of you really reacting to the situation, you've been able to come to me, you've been able to stand firm and come to me, and I've been able to help you navigate through. And so he's saying, with everything that you do, literally everything that you do the same thing. In all that you do, come to me and I will direct your path in every single thing that you do. So he's saying, I want you to dedicate more time to getting closer to me so you can be more sensitive, so you can know which direction to go in every aspect of your life. He's saying, take one step at a time and just trust me, and don't be apprehensive as you have been before, because you are working and working and working, and you don't see things working out the way that you want them to. You don't see things working out as quickly as you would like them to. So you think I don't hear you. You think I don't see your hard work and your dedication. So I know that was God's way of reminding me, I see that you've been dedicated. This is what we need to do in order for you to have some of the desires of your heart that are very much within my will. I need you to dedicate more. Dedicate everything, everything you have at this point. You've dedicated a lot. You're very dedicated to what I asked you to do, but give me some more. give me some more. And I know that that comes with also spiritual sacrifice, like not just with the businesses and, investing more time, gaining knowledge in the fields that I'm in. It's not just subject to that, it's mostly spiritual, mostly aligning myself with being dedicated to learning more about this identity that you say is me, just investing and dedicating more time to, figuring out the ins and outs, hearing God more clearly and being more sensitive to what he is asking us to do. So I know for myself, my call was like, when I know what God said about me and I know what he called me to do, I was like, sir, I'm gonna have to find another. There is no way. I was like, no way, God. And God's been showing me how I have not ran, but I've also not ran too close towards the thing that he's asking me to do. So he's saying, in you dedicating more, yes, it'll be pushing you right towards that thing that you've been apprehensive about. And it's not that you don't believe that I said that about you. You're just apprehensive. You just don't have a clue about what you're doing. But I know that the beautiful thing about being apprehensive and not knowing what I'm doing is how God came in today and was like, you don't have to be apprehensive. I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper and not to harm you. So I need you to be even more dedicated, and I need you to be even more certain that that's what I said. So dedicate yourself to me, 100% dedicate your existence to me, and I will make fruit of it. He's saying, I will do what you asked me to do. I heard what you asked of me. I'm just telling you what you need to do in order to get those things, in order to have what you're asking for, right down to wisdom. He's telling us what to do. Only he's saying, Dominique, you have to position yourself and discipline yourself more. Where you call yourself disciplined, discipline yourself more. And keep going and keep going, and don't. And he's kind of working on my heart about not being so in a rush to get the prize, in a rush to get to a certain place, because it gives a sense of complacency. Because once you get to that place, now you're like, oh, well, I want to go some more and go some more, go to another place. And so God was telling me to be not comfortable where I am, but be okay with where I have you at now, and work as hard as you can, with everything in you, discipline yourself and be obedient to what I'm telling you, the last thing I told you to do, and we can move forward. Like, it's not rocket science. We can move forward. If you were to do the last thing I told you to do, the thing that you were apprehensive about, do that thing. And so that requires, I'm just learning that a lot of this walk requires insane, like, faith. It requires you to plow and to keep plowing. God was saying, dedicate more of your time to the purpose, like the purpose that that I told you is on your life. Dedicate more of your time to being the light to people. Find a way to dedicate more time to being the light, And for me, it could look like doing Women Warriors an extra day of the week. For you, it could look like maybe starting a group chat. It could be the podcast he told you to start. It could be the business that he told you to start. For everybody, it looks different when it comes to dedicating all that you have into the last thing that he told you to do. But I am 100% sure that if I go back and I dedicate my all into the very last thing that he told me to do, that things will begin to bear fruit quickly. God has not ever been a man that lies to me, nor does he lie to anyone else about what he's saying. Like, we have purpose. Everybody has a purpose, and he has a vision for our lives. And I believe that this is a time that he wants us to align ourselves quickly with the vision that he has for our lives. Another thing that he was telling me is that you don't have any spare time in this season. There's no such thing as spare time. You don't have any spare time. If you're really 100% dedicating yourself to what I'm asking you to do. And this season, you just ain't going to have a lot of spare time. But you will be fruitful. You won't have a lot of spare time, but you will be fruitful. And so then that again brings me back to that point. What am I doing with my time? Is my time spent sowing seed into things that will bear fruit? Am I spending time being the light? Because that's what I know God has called me to do. Is that what I'm doing? Or am I doing things that don't aid me in being more disciplined, that don't aid me, in having more dedication, showing God that I'm 100% dedicated? Um, I know for myself, I am very dedicated to the vision that God has given me, as far like, the whole vision. I'm very dedicated, but I know that I could do more. I know that I can do better, and I know that God expects more out of me, because both he and I know he's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and we looking at each other, and we both know that I could do more, that I could apply myself more and not be apprehensive about the change that is to come, because yes, things will change, and I'm aware that things will change along the way. When I decide to be more dedicated, I'm aware that hell may possibly break loose. So it's just like preparing your mind for increase, preparing your mind to go to a greater height, to a greater place, to go deeper in your relationship with God. And that is the thing that I know that God is unctioning my heart for the most, is to go deeper. Like I said earlier, forget all the things. It's about knowing him. I don't want him to say, turn away from me, I never knew you. I don't want that to be something that I have to hear from God. And so I know that the start of, dedicating a fresh dedication is to rededicate my time, rededicate my life and the things that I do, that my actions people will see Christ when they see the way that I act and the way that I talk, that it will be a true reflection of God. And so I know that I can't do that in my own strength, but I do understand that if I dedicate more time, that things will all work together according to his purpose. And so I know that he has a purpose for me to be a light to people. So I need to dedicate more time into self-control. I need to dedicate more time into, making sure that I'm mentally keeping myself where I'm supposed to be mentally. Kind of like the pastor was saying today that was preaching, it's you how can Christ and depression exist in the same vessel? I don't understand how that is. And that's coming from a person who used to be severely depressed. But one thing that crosses my mind, even when depression tries to like nudge its way in, is there's no way I could be sad, um considering where I've came from, considering all that God's done for me, how we are, going right out of celebrating Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I'm here to talk about that. I'm here, I'm living. And so to fix my brain at any point to um try to feed into depression would not be serving my purpose. And so I do empathize and sympathize with those who do struggle with depression, but I know the greatest thing that helped me come out of depression was getting closer to God and having a relationship with him, and being able to have the love of Christ fill that void that sometimes caused depression. The void of many things that we go through in life that may cause us to be sad, have bouts of sadness, really long bouts. Some people have short-term depression. Some people are depressed and they are functional and they don't talk about it. But I thank God that I'm in my right mind. And I pray for those who are not in their right mind. But it is important that in our fresh dedication, that we make sure we're taking care of ourselves mentally. That's an important part of, walking in purpose, is making sure that you're taking care of yourself mentally, making sure you're taking care of your temple physically. That's another thing that you could try when it comes to like a fresh dedication. Like, yes, spiritually, find new ways to dedicate more time to God, new ways to dedicate time to getting the vision. Like, if you don't have the vision yet, dedicating your time to getting the vision. If you already have the vision and it's just not off the ground yet, dedicating time to getting that vision off the ground. Like I said earlier, everybody's situation is different, but just dedicating time to your future self, like the person that you aspire to be, dedicating time to that person. And prayerfully, it's the honorable person that God has called you to be. And so that is, you have to be within his will. And so one thing that I've learned in knowing the purpose that God has over my life, one thing that I have understood is that when I'm away from my call, that is when my life is the most hectic. When I'm not walking in who God has called me to be, that seems to be when the most turmoil comes around. But when I am 100% dedicated and I am moving in who I know God has called me to be, and I'm not suppressing who I know God has called me to be to suit the likes of other people, that is when I feel the best. That is when I feel like, I'm walking in purpose and I'm doing what God has called me to do. But when I am suppressing it and I am, not making the best decisions and not doing the things that God has called me to do that I know I'm supposed to be doing, that's when I tend to suffer the most mentally. And so that's a thing that I'm learning, in just all of this growing. I'm learning that it pays to stay in alignment with who, once you know who God has called you to be, you can't unknow. And so it pays to stay in alignment. Kind of how God was saying, you're not running, but you're still apprehensive. And that just won't work here. You can't be apprehensive anymore. So, it's kind of like stages. Like, you used to run and now you're not running towards it, but you're not running away from it either. You're just like in the middle, like you're looking at it, but you're not walking towards it. Like, you need to dedicate more, less time to being apprehensive and more time to moving towards that thing that the call that I've put on your life. Dedicate more time to moving towards that instead of just standing in limber and like, oh yeah, I'm dedicated because I started the business, I did what God told me to do, but there's more. It's like there's more. You don't get to just stop at, when God tells you to, make moves on a vision that he's given you. You have to understand that there will be times that you have to increase your knowledge. You have to refine your skills, like the whole 180, like all the way around. In all categories of life, you will have to refine your skills. And so I believe that that is what God is calling myself to, as well as many other people, just calling us to a fresh dedication, like a fresh yes. Just saying, okay, God, I know this is what you told me to do. Yes, I'm going to walk out what you told me to do. I'm going to think how you told me to think so that I can obtain those things that are good for me according to your purpose, the plan that you have for my life. And, just knowing that we can overcome all of these things. God has such a big plan for a lot of us. And we have to overcome tests and trials in order to gain wisdom. You have to experience tests and trials. So consider it well. When you are afflicted and when you do go through tests and trials, consider it well because it is for your good. That is one thing that I've also learned in all of this is a lot of the tests and trials that you go through are absolutely for your good, and it is for the shaping of your character. And so focus on those things this week. Just how you can maybe read more. Maybe you can, like I said, change your routine, challenge yourself. Dedicate dedicate all of your time to figuring out what path that God wants you to take. Remember in this week that we don't have spare time. We don't have a lot of time to do what God is telling us to do. And I know that is why He is unctioning me to myself to be more dedicated and to invest more time into the vision that I know that He is clearly given me. And so to be responsible over that vision and to do what I have to do, handle my business, and, like I said, just dedicate that extra little bit of pizzazz that I know that he's talking about that is in me. We're not blind at all to the power that we have because of Christ, within Christ. We're not blind to the power that we have. I think that a lot of times we just use it in the wrong ways. And so I'm compelled to be more humble and to dedicate more of my time, more of my energy into walking out the thing that I know God has called me to do. And I'm refusing to be apprehensive about it anymore. I know exactly what God is talking about because I have just been pretty apprehensive. Like, how could you call me to do such a thing? But I know that it is well, and I know that is exactly He said what He said, and there's nothing I can do about that. But just like I said, disciplining ourselves. And if you've been plowing and it hasn't yet bared fruit, or it hasn't bared the fruit that you would like to see in this season, well, plow harder. And if it's not working out, plow harder and keep your faith alive and know that God did not give you the vision in vain. And so, just keep in mind, like I said, that we don't have spare time. We do have to get aggressive about the thing that God said about us. I know I've been putting up uh, a decent fight, for, just trusting that what I see in front of me has nothing to do with the thing that God said, and just trusting the thing that He said and trusting that wholeheartedly. And so, like I said, dedicate all that time. Start sowing your money. Dedicate time to investments, like finding things that make you better at, the thing that God has called you to do. And so that could look like anything. It doesn't have to be like you're a preacher or something. It could be literally your career, what you do. But just trusting God in all that we do and doing everything for His glory. When it comes to our businesses, doing it, with grace and mercy attached, number one, grace and mercy, but also to dedicate our businesses to God. I'm very upfront about my business being very faith based. We are Jesus Christ driven. And so I thank God for my business. I know that without Him, I could not have built that cleaning business by myself. There's no way I could have done that alone. And so I've just seen the fruit of being faithful. And I am excited to see what God has planned for the Kingdom Cleaners. So I'm going to take this information myself and figure out what can I do to be better at the thing that God is, the vision that God has given me for the Kingdom Cleaners. And you can insert your business name there, when it comes to that. And so, you guys, don't be apprehensive about your vision this week. When it comes to the vision that you have not started yet, write it down on paper. Take one tiny step, one step at a time. Like God said, Jeremiah 29:11, He knows the plans that He has for you, plans to prosper and not to harm you. And so, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up for this week. We just the third, short 30-minute episode or whatever. Just continue to keep my co-host in your prayers. And so, guys, remember to give God a fresh dedication this week. Dedicate your time and your efforts and your energy into things that aid you in your purpose and do not hinder you from your purpose. And we will see you back next week for another episode of Women Warriors. Stay prayed up, y'all.